Hello, welcome back to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. Hope your week is going awesome. Anyway, it's summertime, or it's almost summertime, I should say. So I'm taking a little bit of break from constantly reviewing a lot of products, like I yet like to do. And digging into some of the issues that I have with the products that I typically review. There aren't a lot of products being released currently that are like groundbreaking or new to the market. A lot of them are just repeats of, like 2024 football. I have done so many reviews. If I had a 2025 football, I'd do it, but we're still waiting for the season. So I'll continue to do those. But the issue I have with the current market, as a collector, as a fan, as someone that my friends in high school used to, give me crap about. And what's that? They'd call me a lifer for sports cards. Yeah. And I suppose I am. But I'm not a lifer in the sense that I'm a millionaire, who can buy the cards I want. And an issue that I have with the current sports card market or sports card model, and I know that for one reason, the hobby always likes to demonize the junk wax era, which honestly, I wish it would stop. And the reason why I wish that people dumping on the junk wax era would stop is because we live in a sports card era of over consolidation. And for one reason, just like the sun, it all seems to revolve around this man, Michael Rubin. And, if you dig into the 26,000 year calendar roughly that the sun goes around the universe on, you have to ask yourself, and for one reason, humans never ask themselves this question. What is the sun going around? What is the sun revolving around for 26,000 years? Well, in the sports card hobby, we know what it's revolving around. It's revolving around this man consolidating the market as much as possible. And so what happens in an over-consolidated market? Well, you lose the freedom of choice. And growing up in the junk wax era for the most part, yeah, I was collecting before the junk wax era. And even I was guilty of making fun of all the companies, constantly printing out, sports cards during the junk wax era, is the fact that, well, it was nice to be able to have a choice in what type of baseball cards, football cards, basketball cards, or whatever I want for licensed product. And what I find myself missing in this age of monopolization of sports cards, especially when it comes to baseball cards, like I know Series 2 is getting ready to hit the market. I am so burnt out of licensed Topps cards. I would just love to wake up and go, hey, we're getting, licensed Upper Deck baseball cards, or we're getting licensed Leaf baseball cards, or, back in my day, there were so many different options, Fleer, whatever. We're getting Fleer baseball cards, but there's been so much over consolidation in this market, since, the late 80s, early 90s. And they act like we're in a better market. No, we're not. We're in a market that lacks the freedom of choice. You're in a market where you either go with the monopoly that has the licenses, or you buy unlicensed product that typically, if it's just like a card, a base rookie card, whatever, it doesn't really hold any value. And so, there's been so much over consolidation in the sports card market. But, a few of the consolidations I really liked. And I know I'm old-fashioned. Grew up in the, more or less late 70s, 80s, 90s. But I guess I kind of like to be able to get some bubble gum back when I open up a pack, Maybe I'd like to be ripping open, wax paper with the pack over plastic, I'm so plasticed out of everything is plastic anymore. There's so much plastic. But anyway, I'm going to go over some of these big consolidations, that I pulled up on the Google Gemini overview. Over the years, several sports card companies have been bought and consolidated, leading to significant shifts in the industry landscape. Some key examples include Topps. Now, I don't really have a problem with this acquisition. This is one of the better acquisitions in the hobby, in my opinion. Topps acquired Bowman Gum in 1956. This acquisition helped solidify Topps' dominance in the trading card industry for decades. More recently, in 2022, Fanatics acquired Topps Sports and Entertainment division, including its trading card business. This acquisition significantly impacted the industry, as Fanatics also secured exclusive licenses with major leagues and players associations like MLB, MLBPA, NBA, NBPA, and NFLPA, which were previously held by companies like Topps and Panini. All right. So right there's just a lot of consolidation, a lot of monopolization. And what happens is you lack freedom of choice. Now, could you imagine going out and purchasing a vehicle and you really have only one brand out there to purchase? and they try to act like they're a bunch of different brands with different names. But you all know, let's just pretend that Chevy, GM, whatever, owns all the brands, or Honda. It would drive you mad, Anyway. Flair. Upper Deck acquired the Flair brand and name rights in 2005 after Flair declared bankruptcy. Upper Deck continues the Flair name as a brand for several years. And, Upper Deck, they carry the Flair name. I would prefer for all these companies to be independent, to be honest. I would prefer the old independent Flair company. And then, of course, Donruss. Panini acquired Donruss in 2009. Donruss had previously been acquired by Pinnacle Brands in 1996. They've been all over the map. Everyone has held Donruss somewhere along the way. And I like Donruss. If we could get independent brands again that are licensed, that aren't just part of a consolidated corporation, it would be just so refreshing. Playoff Corporation. Panini also acquired Playoff Corporation, the parent company of Donruss Playoff, in 2009. And I really don't like that, the fact that Panini holds and consolidated all of these awesome companies that I like Playoff cards, when they were independent, And then this one, Pacific Trading Cards. Donruss Playoff acquired Pacific Trading Cards in 2004. And it's this constant, the big fish eats the smaller fish, that fish eats a smaller fish, eats a smaller fish, eats a smaller fish. And all these years of competition and having that freedom of choice to buy, various licensed product has all morphed into this massive monster, that we know as Topps and Fanatics, that has consolidated, monopolized the market to the point to where you really do lack a freedom of choice. And if you want to pretend you have freedom of choice, well, maybe you didn't live during the junk wax era, because I know we didn't really have the internet in the junk wax era that we could be talking about all this, But it was nice to be able to purchase different brands, especially if you're into baseball cards, because I look at Topps baseball cards and I am just so tired of them. I am so tired of how they design them. They lack, creativity. They're just so boring. I would just love to see some Pacific Trading Cards. The independent company put out some new baseball cards. Same with, Flair. Same with Upper Deck. Same with Donruss. I grew up with that. And that's really, some of the best memories I have of sports cards is, a lot of the 90s stuff when you had these companies, when they were putting them out, they were just putting out some awesome cards. I still look at those cards. I mean, I still sell those cards, and people still buy them. I mean, the corners are all messed up, whatever, but they still look awesome. And so, what I don't understand is how everyone is like a zombie in today's current market. And they just, and they let the Pied Piper lead them to the damn river so they can throw themselves in, I mean, it's just so ridiculous the way that the over-monopolization and consolidation has occurred. And the sports leagues are guilty as can be, Who's tearing down the sports card market? If anything, it's the sports leagues, but by not offering other alternatives to this constant over consolidation of the market, they just go along with it. They just think it's filling up their pockets even more. And then we come to grading. And the thing about grading is, in my opinion, you need more grading companies than we really have, because when you have an industry that's over monopolized from the get-go, from the card industry to the grading industry, you feel really limited in your budget to what you can spend. I feel it myself. I'm like, if I was a millionaire, I would still feel like a poor man in this hobby. I don't have $1 billion. It takes $1 billion to really enjoy this hobby. But even if you have $1 billion and you're someone like me, I really, I've been an artist. I've had stuff in art galleries, local art galleries. I still do artwork. I really like the creative aspects of having multiple companies put out multiple licensed sports cards and designs. And overall, when I look at, let's say, my history of football cards, I really like Pacific Trading Cards. I just wish I could bring them back to life, get them away from Panini, give them licensed products, get some new designers in there, and start to, really push the envelope in sports cards. I'm just not seeing that when it comes to grading. I'm not really seeing anything when it comes to grading. I'm seeing this constant, the big shark is eating, a smaller fish, but that smaller fish just ate another smaller fish. And I'm just, the over consolidation of this market, in my opinion, is hurting it. And I know that there's a lot of desperate people with our current economy who are going into this market going, hey, I can make some money here. That's how I really look at Pokemon scalpers. Do you want to blame the scalper or do you want to blame the economy? And, it'd be nice to have more choice, in my opinion, in this decision, because you can see it. Pokemon scalpers. People don't like Pokemon scalpers. Well, I really look at Pokemon scalpers as a product of an economy that's just really not doing very good, Anyway, it says here, the top 3 sports card grading companies in terms of share and perceived value are PSA, BGS. And I don't know why they put SGC, because to me, SGC is just PSA version 2.0 in this over-consolidated market. They can keep the labels on. I know Panini likes to release every now and then. I see some Aurora stuff. I really like the original Aurora sports cards. I wish I could just get the company back in an independent mode with licensing, because I just prefer the artists that they were hiring. And I ask myself, I look at some of these 90 cards, and they're just better designs. They look more modern than our current age of sports cards to an extent. And the reason why is because you have more freedom of choice. And it's just like, could you imagine, I'm an artist. If they completely monopolized, artwork to where all you can see is one artist's artwork everywhere you go, it's the same artist, it would just drive me insane. And it could be the best artist in the world. I wouldn't care. I'm just so burnt out of your artwork, And I'm burnt out of your grading. And I'm burnt out of your consolidation. I'm burnt out of how you use your money to take over everything. That's just the nature of the sports card market. It's a bunch of piranhas just eating everything they can. And I am so tired of it. It would just be so nice to have some independence and some freedom of choice, Freedom of choice was always important in the 1980s. I don't understand this current generation to an extent. It's just a bunch of sheep. And I just wish that you could just taste a freedom of choice and see how it feels. Like I enjoyed in the, late 80s, 90s, yeah. Junk wax. I can still buy junk wax. It's all licensed at least, to an extent. It holds more value than the unlicensed stuff that we're just always getting shilled out because of the monopolization. And then just to remind you, yes, Collectors Holdings, the parent company of PSA, acquired SGC on February 29th, 2024. Whoop, whoop. Aren't you excited that they took away more freedom of choice because they have to monopolize the whole market, and get as much money for the corporation as possible? Aren't you just getting burnt out? I mean, to me, it's like I've overdosed on all this, and I'm ready to barf it up in the toilet. I can't hardly take it anymore. I believe that this is one of the reasons why this market will eventually fall again. There's a lot of reasons, but I just believe that it's always going to be the over-consolidation of this market by guess who? This seems to be what the market is revolving around. He tends to be the sun in the sports card market universe, But I wish that we could get back to what we are, the old way of doing things again. And so we're not just constantly revolving around one company, or in this case, one man. I'm just so tired. At my age, when I thought of sports cards back in the late 80s or early 90s, where they would be by now, I never expected an over-monopolized, over-consolidated market that really leaves you with a lack of freedom of choice and artistic design. I didn't really feel like we were going to be a bunch of zombies, that, are being brainwashed. Oh, Topps Fanatics is the best thing to ever hit the sports card market. I'm tired. I've been doing this for too long. I like my freedom of choice. I like to see different artists put out stuff. I am so tired of Topps and Fanatics and this man. If this man ever wanted to do a favor for the sports card hobby, he would let all of his companies go and bring some, innovation into the sports card hobby, because this sort of market is not going to bring any innovation to the hobby. It really isn't. And until you realize it, until you've overdosed on it, until you've looked at enough cards and go, oh man, they're all the same pretty much, you're just not really going to understand what's happened to the sports card market since, the 80s junk wax era. Are you just tired of, like me, of always stepping up, to swing at a pitch? And we all know who's pitching. It's always Topps and Fanatics, always with the same boring designs, same boring inserts, same stupid chase, and they don't really have a lot of great quality. It's not like, how many autos, are they just letting their family members sign off on? Oh yeah, there's a Topps rep. Yeah, give me a break, Anyway, over-monopolization, over-consolidation has left this market, in my opinion, a nightmare. A nightmare that lacks, to me, one of the greatest things about being an American. And what is that? The freedom of choice. The freedom to look at one pack and go, I would prefer to buy this company over you. And they're both licensed. I would just love to do that. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. I'd like to thank all of my subscribers and recent subscribers. You really are the glue that keeps this channel together. If you're a viewer, I'd like to thank you for taking the time for checking out my channel. If you could just click the subscription button, it's 100% free, and it would really help this channel out a lot in the long run. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. I'm out of here. Bye.